Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mentors Mayhem again. I'm Tina Brown with Dental Practice Enhancement, and we have a very special guest with us today, Miss Lois Banta. And just a little about Lois. Okay, so I met her several years ago, and she was such an inspiration to me, always positive, always on the upbeat, always moving and grooving. And I thought, wow, to have that kind of energy, I'm still working on it. But it's just been so amazing to know her, to get to know her and her philosophies. And just what she does in the dental industry is amazing and has paved the way for a lot of us to follow in her footsteps and just go out there to make dental offices better and greater and grow. So that's kind of our philosophy as well. And so I'm going to go ahead and read her bio for you. And in case nobody has met Lois yet, this is who she is. She is the CEO, president, and founder of Banta Consulting Incorporated, a company that specializes in all aspects of dental practice management. Lois has over 45 years of dental experience and consults and speaks nationally and internationally. She is the owner and CEO of the Speaking Consulting Network and a member of several professional organizations. So I know we have a lot to talk about today, so I will just let you go for it, Lois.
Thank you so much, Tina. It's an honor to be on your program. I'm super, super excited for what you're designing and developing with bringing in the experts in the industry to really help not only us grow our businesses, but to help dental practices really find their lane and have the best successes ever. So that's why I'm excited to talk about my topic today, which is literally creating breakthrough steps to have a successful practice while not increasing your stress level.
Yes. Okay, so we have, yes, I love this, 7 breakthrough steps. Let's start with production.
Okay, so every practice should have production goals. Every software system has the ability to create those goals right in your software. So you can do daily, weekly, monthly monitoring of your goals. But you also don't want to put the cart before the horse. You need to know those overhead numbers. And I think that is the biggest stumbling blocks that practices have in figuring out what their goals should be. Even my current clients email me every once in a while and they say, hey, Lois, I talked to my buddy and they said my doctor production should be about $500 an hour. So I think we're going to go with that. And my immediate reaction is, oh no, how do you know it should be $500 an hour? Will that create the productivity enough to put the money in the bank to pay the bills, which sounds like that nursery rhyme, this is the house that Jack built. So when I talk about production, I think you need to know what you need to produce and get on the books, and then marry that with where your adjustments are going to be so you know how much collectible amounts there are going to be so that you can pay the bills and have some left over to reinvest back in the practice. So when I talk about production, you do need to set production goals, but you also need to know your overhead so you know what goal to actually set. So when I encounter a practice that hasn't really tracked their overhead specifically or in a detail-oriented fashion, then I take what they did last year and take a look at how many dollars they're collecting. And usually the phone call I get is, we don't have enough money in our bank to pay the bills. We're producing all this money. What do you think I should do? And so I start with what they've done and try and create kind of a roadmap for what they did to build towards where we need to make changes to increase that production. There are a couple of things that also add to and detract from production. For instance, open time on the schedule. Open time is one of the biggest deterrents to making your production goal. And I've done the math. When a practice, let's say that I'm gonna get my little computer calculator out here. So let's say the average hygiene production is $200 an hour. And let's say the average dental practice works 210 days a year. And you have one opening. So if one opening in hygiene per day equals $200 and you work 210 hygiene days, you've just lost $42,000 in production.
Wow.
Now, let's take that on the operative side, the doctor side. This is the bread and butter practice. Let's say they set their goal at $500 an hour. If they have 1 hour of open time on the operative side and they work 210 days, they just let another $105,000 go in their practice. So if you do nothing in your practice but reduce 1 hour of open time each day on the operative side and reduce 1 hour of open time on the hygiene side, you've gained $147,000 in potential production without changing anything else. You don't change your goals. You don't change the number of days. You don't change your hours. You don't change your hourly goal. If you don't do anything else but reduce 1 hour of open time on each side of that schedule every single day, you'll gain $142,000 in production if your average production per hour is 200 in hygiene and 500 on the operative. So really, the production is about removing your emotional right brain from the topic and inserting your left brain diagnostics. That means you have to do the math. If you can do the math and remove the emotion from the math, you can have an amazing productive practice.
Wow. I mean, it sounds easy enough, but I guess we would just need to concentrate on that, right?
Yeah. So for instance, I had a client, she just texted me yesterday. She's from Nevada and she is getting ready to paint her office and remove the carpet and put linoleum tile planks down, right? Okay, so that's great. So she called a construction company, to a contractor, to come in, give her a quote. They gave her a quote and they said she needs to shut down her practice for 2 weeks. And I said, no, not 2 weeks. No, it's paint and carpet removal. So no. So I said, get them down to a week, maybe a week and a half, figure out where you're going to take your vacation break, have them in, right? She said, but I'm going to lose 1.5 weeks production. I said, no, we're going to restructure your hourly goal to produce the same amount in less time. So once you do the math, if you can pre-plan that in your projects, then it's not such a scary thing for closing the office for a week and a half so you can do some cosmetic improvements.
Right.
So really, everything about production comes down to doing the math.
Yes.
So I think there needs to be a lecture titled, Do the Math. If you do the math, everything is possible.
That is absolutely true. And I think sometimes offices, I'm guilty of it. Doctor goes on vacation and we're like, woohoo, we got time off. Mm-hmm. But I forgot those other 3 weeks, I still need to produce the same amount. So I have to up some things. And
yeah, I equate the same thing, Tina, with, let's say there's a snow day or a storm day and they've had to close the office for a day and they want to make up the day. You really don't have to make up the day. You just have to make up the production. So if you're a practice, we'll get creative. Let's say you're a practice that does Invisalign. 1 Invisalign case, two Invisalign cases extra that month will make up that day production. So you just have to, again, it's about doing the math. And there's one more thing I wanted to mention before we move on to collections, is that in the morning huddle that a practice should have every single day, one of the sections that everyone earmarks to talk about is our goals and whether or not we've met our goal. But what I see the big mistake that's made there is they micromanage the goal. So they talk about, here, we produced this yesterday, we're producing this today, tomorrow we have this on our schedule. And it micromanages your focus and it will stress a practice out because there's no possible way to make your goal every single day, but you can average your goal over a week's time. So I always recommend that if you've got your goals in the computer and you've got your scheduled production scheduled appropriately in the computer, there's a line item that your software system can give you that will tell you where you are month to date. And if you start your month with 50% of your production goal already scheduled, you're on target to make your goal for the month. So I think every day you need to talk about the big picture and where you are for the month. And it's going to be a lot less stressful. It's going to feel more rewarding, and the team won't tune out to that part of the morning huddle.
Right.
Really participate.
Yeah, I notice sometimes that we just kind of get honed in on that goal and we want to make it, but if we're doing the right steps, it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. So we just need to continue to move forward. implement the right steps,
Yes.
and at
And
the
look at
end
the
of the
big
month,
picture.
yes, and look at the big picture. So,
Yeah,
yes.
that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now how about collections?
Okay. So there's two basic principles with collections. You know, you keep your eye on the ball with the collections because that's the money actually going into the bank that you're able to pay the bills on. But you're never going to be able to collect your gross production. You've got to know the gross production number and the net production. The net production is gross production minus your write-offs and adjustments, insurance write-offs, prepayment write-offs, etc. So now you've got that net production amount and you've got that collectible amount, but your collections that you report wouldn't be your gross collections, they would be your net collections. So net collections is gross collections minus refunds. So if you've refunded money to an account or to an insurance company, or for any reason you've refunded money, that money has to be deducted from your total collections to get your net collections amount, because that's the amount that actually went in the bank that you can pay the bills on. So I have a couple of statistics that I like to track around the collections arena. Every practice should set a goal for a collection percentage. I set that goal, and the industry standard is 98% collection percentage of the net production. Keeping in mind, approximately 2% of the time your patients are going to choose not to pay their bill. So that's going to be a bad debt write-off. So you want to accommodate, or at least think that one through so that you can be more realistic with that collection possibility. Now, along the lines of net collections, when you set that 98% collection percentage goal every month, that's the percentage number that if practices pay attention to that every single month, it will drive them crazy. And you know this as well as I do, Tina, is that if you have a very high production month 2 months ago, your net collections is going to be lower because it's going to be out of whack. So you want your average, right? So one of the numbers that I truly believe is the barometer measurement for the successful collections in a practice is tracking your accounts receivables ratio, because that, and it's also an accounts receivables ratio is your trend identifier. So that means that if your practice, you add together 3 months gross production. So let's say your average monthly production, you add together 100,000, 100,000, 100,000 equals 300 total over 3 months. Divide that number by 3. Now you have an average monthly production of $100,000. I'm going to keep the math real simple. Then you measure that against your total accounts receivables. So you divide that average monthly production by the total accounts receivables to reveal your accounts receivables ratio. Usually that number is going to be like 1.0 or 0.95 or something like that. That number is what is revealed that tells you, the practice owner, how long that money is staying on the books, or how long it takes to collect an average 1 month gross production. That is the number that you want to measure every single month, because it is based on a 3 month average, which if you track a statistic and it goes in a specific direction 3 months in a row, you have a trend. Trends are not 1 month up, 1 month down, 1 month up, 1 month down. A trend is actually a number that goes in a specific direction. So if you've worked on over-the-counter collections and increasing your over-the-counter collections, and it's increased every single month, then your accounts receivables will decrease every single month. And that's going to be a healthy trend. Does that make sense?
Right. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I love that.
Yeah.
Talking a little bit about over-the-counter collections. Now, do you recommend if a patient comes in, they're having, let's say, a crown done, and we want to make sure that we get their payment? What do you think about asking the patient when they first walk in, Dora's setting up your room, it'll be just a couple of minutes. Would you like to go ahead and take care of your balance now?
Yes,
What do you think
I love that. In fact, the verbal skill that I typically use is, we know you're going to be back there for a little while, so let's go ahead and settle up your payment now, so that when you're finished, you can just walk right out the door.
I like that.
I try to keep the questions to the patients and limit the yes/no questions and give them a couple of options. And as long as we're talking about over-the-counter payments, one of my favorite ways to collect over-the-counter is to respond to patients who want to, let's say, make that payment in 2 payments. They Crown, it's going to take 2 appointments. Can I make 2 payments? Absolutely. But 50% of that amount is due today when you schedule the appointment, and the remaining balance is due before the prep starts. Because you haven't irreversibly altered the tooth structure, you could alter the appointment if
Right.
you bring the remaining balance. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So what that does is paid for dentistry doesn't tend to fail their appointments. So it tends to really ensure that patients are going to keep their appointment, and it guarantees that your over-the-counter collections is going to be at an appropriate level.
Right. I have noticed in the past that a toothache tends to happen, or a tooth tends to continue to bother you if you haven't paid your bill.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up, because one of my favorite collection methods, when you're monitoring your accounts receivables and you're sending those final notices out, and to your listeners, if they want a sample of my final notice letter, I'm happy to send it to you, and you can send it out, Tina, or they can you directly. Either one is fine with me. But the final notice letters, it's a multiple choice. They've got like 6 choices, and one of the choices on there is for them to respond with, I don't believe I owe I'm not going to pay my bill. I don't believe I owe this amount. That's the only response that you call the patient immediately. And if they start saying their tooth still hurts, that's why I haven't paid my bill. If you back up the bus a little bit, once that tooth preparation is completed, patients on their way out the door, I recommend that the dentist do a TLC phone call to the patient to check in with them to see how their tooth is feeling. Typically, they will respond with, oh no, my tooth never felt better. I can't even tell where the crown was done or where the filling was done. It feels great. Now, you document that in your account records, in quotes, patient said, my tooth feels great. So that when they respond with, I'm not going to pay my bill because my tooth still hurts, you get to refer back to that note and say, oh, but you said 3 months ago, your tooth never felt better. What's changed? Let's get you in and fix that little dilemma so that we can get you on down the road, and let's settle your account then. So it's a great conversation opener and a way to catch the patient in a little teeny tiny fib.
No, patients don't fib. No.
They might fib just a little bit.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so how about scheduling for success?
Well, so there are a couple of things that I keep in mind for scheduling, and it's so funny because someone just Facebook messaged me today on looking for a systematic approach to keep the schedule full. I do have one, and so I'm going to briefly explain my philosophy. This is what I used for 25 years of working in a dental office, and I rarely had an opening on the schedule because I covered all the bases. So my first recommendation is cover all your bases. That means pre-schedule reliable patients. Mm-hmm. So my first comment is not every patient should pre-schedule their next hygiene appointment, because you're going to have 6 months down the road a bunch of holes in your schedule because of people who you forced to schedule their next 6-month appointment and they weren't ready. I would be a terrible risk to pre-schedule because I travel for a living. I don't know what my schedule is going to look like in 6 months, but I'm a really great compliant patient. So if you send me a notice or send me a text or call me, I'm going to know what my schedule is in the next couple of weeks, and I will call you to schedule an appointment. But you do want to schedule those people who really rely on planning out 6 months in advance. But there are people in the police industry and the firefighters and the nurses and the doctors and the factory workers that they don't know their schedule 6 months in advance, and they work shifts. So you want to be sensitive to the needs of each individual patient. So my first suggestion in having a profitable schedule is don't pre-schedule everybody. Okay. The second suggestion is to pre-block your schedule for certain kinds of appointments if you want to have more predictable results. And I will tell you, that is the scariest thing I teach to a scheduling coordinator, because the immediate response is, and you've probably heard this many times, Tina, but what if I don't fill it? What if I don't fill it? That appointment's going to be blank. Right. And I always compare it to that movie, The Field of Dreams. you know, that the little voice that comes to Kevin Costner's character and says, if you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
If you block it, you will have opportunities to put your patients on the schedule. And then it changes the conversation. And instead of asking the yes, no question, do you want to go ahead and schedule this appointment, or the deadly, what day works best for you or what time works best for you, you can say, you know, let's go ahead and schedule that next appointment. And the next 2 appointments I have available are Tuesday at 8 or Wednesday at 1. Now, I've just asked the patient at that time, do they want a morning or an afternoon, but I'm offering them specific appointment times. The
Right.
rule of thumb is your patients want to feel in control of their life.
Mm.
And so they don't want you to dictate your schedule to them. But what you're actually doing is dictating their schedule to them. You're just giving them an opportunity to choose, which makes them feel in control. And it's a little bit of camera trickery. So it works. So that's one of the things that I did. The other thing that I recommend in scheduling for success is to have a systematic approach to filling the schedule. So number one, have a systematic approach to following up with your patients who are due. So you're going to generate current 30, 96, 5 lists. So you're going to generate your patients who are due but not scheduled in the future. So, and you set aside pre-block time on your own schedule away from the front desk to work these systems. So you're going to send out your notices of patients who are currently due in the future, patients who are 30 days overdue, 90 days overdue, 6 months overdue, and then there's that 18-month overdue that I'm going to talk about in a minute. So I generate lists of a date range. Now, this is going to sound very illogical the first time you do it, because you're going to think, I'm missing contacting a boatload of people. But what in reality, it prevents you from calling your patients over and over, the same patient over and over too many times, and then annoying them. So you send your notice to the patients who are due in the future. 2 weeks later, you follow up on the ones who didn't call to schedule their appointment. That's system number one. Number two, you generate your 30 days overdue but not scheduled patients. You call those patients. Number three, the next week, you're going to generate your 90 days overdue patients that aren't scheduled, and you're going to call them. Then the 6 months overdue patients, you're going to generate that list. You're going to send them a letter, a "we're concerned about you" letter, and you're going to call those patients. Now, you're only going to call these patients one time, but over a 6-month period, they'll get 3 or 4 phone calls. Then the 18 months overdue list, and I have a special letter and return postcards work, or return communication back. Reply yes, or reply I need an appointment, or call our office. So I send a letter to them saying, we're very concerned about you. We realize you may have made other plans to see another dentist. Please let us know what you'd like us to do with your status in our practice. And there's a multiple choice. One is, I can't believe I haven't scheduled. Please call me as soon as possible. The second one is, you know, I don't want to inactivate in your practice, but I'm just not ready to schedule an appointment right now. Please don't inactivate me. There's a third option that says, I'm seeing another dentist. You need to know that, but then you be brave and you contact those patients who say, I'm seeing another dentist, and you say the magic phrase, in order to improve our patient experience for the future, would you mind sharing with us why you left? And then there's a fourth option in it. All it says is other, because if the parent or the patient or the mom, dad, sister, brother has passed away, you need to know that information so you don't send multiple notices to a deceased person in the family. And there's nothing more frustrating and angering than contacting a patient multiple times that has passed away. So there's that option, and I'm not going to put the option deceased. I'm just going to put the option other, and that gives the family member an opportunity to respond with, you know, we need to remove that name from the account because they passed away. So, and so then the next month comes along, you recycle the list. So now you're reaching a whole new batch of people. So you're not contacting the same people over and over. The thing that I hate is the dreaded unscheduled list. I wish that was never, ever invented in a software system, because that's the list full of people who have canceled but not rescheduled. And there's no motivation for them to reschedule. And the list is typically 600 pages long of people who canceled their appointment 5 years ago, and you just never cleared the list. Right. So I clear that list every single month, because that name is going to fall into one of those current 30, 90, 6-month, 18-month categories. That name is going to show up on one of those lists. So there's really no need to ever use the unscheduled list. But the magic list that I love is the priority list. So in EagleSoft, it's called Sooner If Possible, and in Dentrix, it's called ASAP, and in SoftDent, it's called short call list. And so it's a list of people who have appointments who, if you get a change in your schedule sooner, will come sooner for an appointment. But the magic there is you want to have detailed notes. And the rule is you don't call those patients more than twice. You offer them a sooner appointment only 2 times. If they say no 2 times, take them off the list.
Okay.
So notoriously, that priority list is not utilized efficiently in a software system.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I learned, well into my career about those lists, and they definitely help, and it fills your schedule, and it's wonderful.
Yes. And, you have to marry the systematic approach with really excellent verbal skills. So the rule in scheduling for success is not to ask yes, no questions, and to offer 2 appointment choices. And when you do, the patient feels in control, but you're actually in control. And then if you have like a 1 doctor practice, 2 assistants, and you're scheduling in 2 columns, then you're going to want to go merge into the optimization, or I call it choreographing the schedule, where you're overlapping the appointments slightly, but you have to then create a master list of appointment times for every procedure in the practice, how much seat the patient time, doctor and assistant time, and then assistant only time, so that you don't overlap the appointments inappropriately.
Right. Good.
Lots to learn in scheduling arena.
Most definitely. And it's key.
Yeah.
So how about treatment planning?
So treatment planning is one of my favorite topics because it's where we tend to, along with scheduling, make the biggest boo-boo choices in our profession. So there's this wonderful report that you can generate. Once a treatment plan has been created, there's a report that can be generated called the treatment plan report. However, if you don't monitor that report and you don't generate that report every month, it's going to become the deep lead abyss in your system. So the philosophy on treatment planning, of course, is maybe the patient's seated chairside with the hygienist, and the hygienist and the patient are having a conversation about any kind of concerns they're having in their mouth. Or maybe the really astute hygienist and the dentist have a philosophy of taking a tour of the patient's mouth with an intraoral camera, and then putting those photos up in front of the patient so the patient can kind of self-diagnose almost. It's, the only person who can diagnose in a dental practice, of course, is the dentist. But any one of us can be a good seed planter and a co-discussion creator. So treatment planning first starts with that first discussion. You want to have a good treatment acceptance. And so that's why that report monitoring comes into play and plays such an important role if you're utilizing that treatment plan appropriately. So when a treatment plan is created for the patient, let's say the patient says, I have to check my schedule. I'm not quite sure what my schedule is, and I'll call you, right? The dreaded patient says, I'll call you. Well, I like to then say to the patient, I completely understand you needed to check your schedule or check with your family member or check your budget, etc. With your permission, and that's the magic 3-word phrase. With your permission, I'd like to follow up with you next week. If you wouldn't mind, I'd like to make a phone call to you. If I haven't heard from you by Wednesday, I'd like permission to call you. And they say, sure, absolutely. Then I'm going to narrow down a time. Well, what time of day? That's the only time I use that phrase, oh, by the way. What time of day is best for me to contact you to follow up with that treatment plan in case I haven't heard back from you? They say, well, anytime after 3 o'clock. No problem. I'm immediately going to my Google Calendar setup. I'm making an appointment with myself to call that patient, and it's going to ding me with a reminder on my computer. Remember to call Lori to schedule her appointment. Now, let's say the patient says, I need a pre-estimate sent. I hate pre-estimates. I don't know about you, Tina, but I think I call them pre-delay. I just hate them. And every software system is designed to be a good estimator of estimated patient portion, because if you're using, and this is one of your areas of expertise, if you're using that update insurance table update every single time a payment comes in, you update those facts and figures, and it's going to predict what the insurance will pay the next time that patient comes in for that procedure for that particular plan. But some of those patients are real stubborn. And so send the pre-estimate, but schedule their appointment out about 3 or 4 weeks and let them know as soon as the pre-treatment comes back, we'll call and we'll have a more firm financial discussion with you. Now, treatment reports and treatment acceptance. There is a philosophy that I have. I believe that you should 75% of your treatment plans should be scheduled. You should have a treatment acceptance rate of about 75%, which means 25% of them are the ones you're going to follow up on. 75% of them they're going to schedule. Now, the other thing about a treatment plan that you present to the patient, Dentrix is the only one right now that I know has a customizable, patient-friendly, user-friendly treatment plan that you can create. And I get to say that I planted that seed with Dentrix at a think tank summit. So,
oh, wow.
The other form that I'm happy to share with your listeners, Tina, is my sample treatment plan Word document. So I believe very strongly that patients should not be presented with a treatment plan that's too technical. They don't know tooth numbers, they don't know surfaces, they don't know technical terminology, they definitely don't know insurance codes. That's our job. We know those. So I want the treatment plan to be presented to that person so it can go into their brain and they completely comprehend it. So the 2 practices ago that I worked for, Gary Patrick Morgan, best dentist I've ever worked for in my life. He was a great treatment planner. He always set goals for the patient, and he would recite the goals that he had for the patient before he delivered the treatment plan. So the first goal was always lifelong oral health and comfort. He wanted the patient to know his goal was to help them keep their teeth for a lifetime. And the next goal was to cover and discuss their preventive and periodontal concerns. The next goal that was listed was any restorative needs that they had. And the next one, if they had missing teeth, he would have one of the things in his treatment plan goals as replacing missing teeth. And then sometimes the patient comes into the practice, and you probably experienced this. I want that Julia Roberts smile. I want to have that Invisalign, but they have periodontal disease and active decay. So cosmetic is always the last thing that we always listed, and we say we'd love to deliver that cosmetic dentistry to you. These are the things we need to cover first before we're able to do that. And then we write a total at the bottom. Now, a lot of my clients do quadrant totals or appointment totals, which is totally fine. Just don't line item each individual crown and filling, etc. And then we always get a signature from the patient. Not that they agreed to the treatment, but that they understand and accepted the treatment that was presented to them. And we were very careful to explain this signature just means that you didn't have any questions and you understood what it is that we discussed. We don't want you signing it until you completely understand. And then I always recommend 2 disclaimers to be placed right on the treatment plan. One is the fees are guaranteed for the next 90 days from the date of this discussion. That way, if you have a fee adjustment in 60 days, you're not beholden to that if they wait beyond 90 days.
Right.
And the other one is any changes in the treatment, mid-treatment, will always be discussed in financial arrangements first before proceeding. We put that right in the disclaimers so the patient is fully aware that unexpected things come up during treatment, sometimes adding costs to the dentistry, and we want to try and avoid that as much as possible, but in the event that happens, we will always discuss it with you first. So that's my treatment plan philosophy, Tina.
Awesome. I love that. Now, question. So if we're doing a treatment plan and the doctor needs to do, let's say, 3 or 4 crowns, and he knows he's going to do a buildup on one of them, and he thinks he's going to do a buildup on 2 more, would you go ahead and add that buildup in there just in case?
Yes. I always treatment plan for the possibility of whatever might come up. So if there's a slight possibility the tooth might need a root canal or a buildup, we've always treatment planned it in there. It's much better to surprise the patient with the good news that they didn't need that root canal and that buildup than the bad news of, well, this was your treatment plan, but it's going to cost you another $2,000. That feels like a bait and switch to the patient. You never want to surprise them negatively, especially when it comes to finances.
Okay. Awesome. I love that. So now, how to track and recover accounts receivables and insurance claims.
It's one of my favorite topics.
Big one.
My very first lecture that I ever wrote when I started my business 20 years ago, I can't believe I'm saying that, 21 years ago, is my first lecture that I wrote was how to be your own insurance and accounts receivables detective. And so sometimes I feel like when we're recovering monies on the accounts and getting the money off the books and in the bank, I feel sometimes like we have to be somewhat of a detective. So let's talk about accounts receivable. So in case you were not going to be surprised by this, I have a systematic approach. I have a systematic approach to every single thing, every single major system in the practice, because a systematic approach allows you, number one, not to skip important steps, and number two, to really cover all your bases. So talking about accounts receivables, the first thing you want to do is you want to generate your account aging report. It is in every software system. It's called accounts receivables aging, account aging, or aging report. You generate that report. I generate it in alphabetical order because it's my fact check mission before I send statements. I want to fact check and make sure that all of the I's have been dotted and the T's have been crossed before I send someone a statement, or an erroneous statement would be horrible.
Right.
So I generate the AR report. I call it the AR report, and in alphabetical order. You can generate it in oldest balance order or date in order of age. I like it alphabetical because I use it in coinciding with my sending of my statements. There's two things you want to look at that aging report. And before I say that, you never want to include credit balances in your aging report. You want a separate credit balance report run, because you're not going to obviously call patients to collect a credit balance. So think of the account aging report as your own personal workbook. So I'm eliminating the things that I'm really not going to monitor in an account aging report. So if you don't send statements for balances under $5, then I'm going to customize my report to not include balances under $5, so to speak, because I create a small balance statement quarterly for those patients with a small balance. That's a separate action item. So in that account aging report, I'm going to monitor two things. I want to know the age of the account, and I want to know when their last payment was, their last personal payment. The aging report is also going to indicate whether or not there's an outstanding insurance claim, so you can coincide that with your collections of your insurance balances processes. So it's as dangerous to have a balance over 90 days old that is making a small monthly payment as it is to have a balance that is up to 90 days old and they haven't made the first payment. You're going to have two different kinds of conversations. In two of the offices I've worked in, I was hired specifically as the strategic specialist to get the money off the books and in the bank. And in both of those situations, the accounts hadn't been managed very well. In fact, statements hadn't been sent consistently. No account receivable phone calls, bad balance phone calls had been made, and letters hadn't been sent. So nobody was really working the accounts receivables. In fact, in this one office, they were only sending statements after insurance payment. So anybody who didn't have insurance or who had an old balance didn't get a statement. So it's like, you don't have a crystal ball, and they can't read your mind to guess whether or not they have a balance. So it's a real dangerous thing. So I get that account aging report. If you can, and your software supports it, send it to an Excel spreadsheet, because that's where you can kind of highlight in blue, yellow, pink, blue 30, yellow 60 day, 90 day, over 90 days, like pink. You can visually see where your older balances are. Now, some of you are probably listening to this phone call going, "You're nuts, Lois. I'm just going to generate the list in oldest balance order." It's really not a wrong way to do that. If that's your system, go do that system. This is my system. And so I mark up my report, and I want to know, when was that last patient payment? Now, the software system is just going to show you when the last patient payment was. It might be 2012, but the patient's balance is only 30 days old. Obviously, they don't have a 90-day past due payment. So you're going to have to really kind of do the math there. Then I generate my statement messages to coincide with that account aging report. So I'm sending a gentle reminder message: your account balance is over 30 days old, please pay. A 60-day message and a phone call follow-up saying your account is over 60 days past due, you are at risk for it going into collections. And then the 90-day reply letter that I talked about earlier that you can send to the patient in a priority envelope. Once you go to the post office and you get that receipt back, the receipt has a barcode on it that you can scan with your cell phone and verify that it was delivered. So you don't have to send final notices, certified return receipt.
Okay.
So that's my systematic approach to accounts receivables. The other really important thing I want to mention about accounts receivables is that every day that the patient comes in, review the schedule. If you're the financial manager in the practice, review the schedule and mark any accounts that have a previous balance. So when the patient finalizes their appointment, you can be a broken record and say, including your previous balance of $350, your estimated amount due today is $750. How did you want to handle that payment? Now, you could have a lot of fun with those conversations, and I did. I smiled real big when I was asking for that money, because I caught patients off guard initially going, what? Wait a minute, nobody told me I was going to have to pay today. Where's Janet? And Janet was the one who didn't do her job properly. And so I always say, oh, Janet's no longer with the practice and we miss her. And we wish her well. And then I go right back to my initial, including your previous balance of $350, your amount due today is $750. How did you want to handle that payment? You may get some pushback from the patients. I didn't bring my credit card. No problem. We take cash and checks. I never carry my checkbook with me and I don't have cash. No problem. I'm going to generate my courtesy statement. I'm going to give them an envelope. I'm going to put a stamp on that envelope. I'm going to hand it right to them saying, if you wouldn't mind, just pop that payment in the mail. As soon as you get home. And if I haven't heard from you in the next 5 days, I personally promise to follow up with a phone call. And I just told the patient, we know where you live and we're going to hunt you down. We're going to get that money. And so it gave the patient a heads up that now they know what the payment guidelines are for next time. And I do tend to tell the patient, you know, you couldn't have known that our payment guidelines have changed. But we're so excited. We actually have the ability to accept your payment now right here in this office. Isn't that great? And I get real excited about telling them that. They, you know, the patients are going to act how they act, and I can't control how they act, but I can control how I act. And so that's my accounts receivable system, is I try to get it over the counter. I try not to have to make collection calls. I hated making them. And when you do, just use your "you just won the lottery" voice. Ask them to call you back regarding their appointment. Now you're going to catch them off guard. Every single patient will call you back saying, I don't remember making an appointment. And you're going to be going, oh, did I say appointment? Oh, darn it. I meant account. They both start with an A. And you get your little internal giggle on. And it works, by the way. And I've had so much feedback from my audience members saying that philosophy actually works.
I love that.
The same philosophy with outstanding insurance claims. You want to generate that report every single month. You want to make phone calls to the insurance companies for any insurance claims that are more than 30 days old. Don't just resend the claim. You got to find out why they haven't paid, because maybe they're missing important information like a group number or a patient ID number, or maybe the names are mixed up, etc. Or maybe they don't have that insurance anymore. So you always want to be a good detective and contact the insurance company and talk to a live person if you can. Now, if you're calling and you reach someone in a foreign country, which frequently will happen, some of this, and you can fill in the blanks. You're calling like India or Pakistan or some foreign country. Ask to speak with someone inside the U.S. You have a right, because you sent the claim inside the U.S., you have a right to ask to be transferred to someone inside the United States. You might get cut off once or twice, but call back if you're one of 10,000 other people. So generate that insurance claims report in insurance company order. Sometimes you have the opportunity to generate it in patient order, but you're going to call one insurance company 12 times for 12 patients if you do it that way, and you want to be efficient. So insurance company order. I will tell you, most of my clients don't have any claims over 60 days old. They're using electronic claims, electronic payments, electronic funds transfers, electronic remittance advices. And when you're doing it that way, and I'm sure you probably had many conversations, Tina, that is the most efficient way to really get your claims in the bank, is to get that money electronically forwarded. It might cost a few cents in your processing, but it's worth it in the end, because the statistic that I always utilize in my seminars is for every month that an account balance remains unpaid beyond 90 days, the practice loses 7% of the value of that money that's on the books. So by the time it gets to 12 months, you've already invested more in labor and office supplies and time than the balance is actually worth. So every single means needs to be taking place to get that money off the books and in the bank within 60 days. I also tell the patient that as a courtesy, we'll file your claim and we'll track it for the first 60 days. And if after 60 days we haven't heard from your insurance company, the claim explodes in our computer and it's forwarded to you for full payment. So I always encourage the patient to monitor their own claim. So yeah.
I like that one. I love it. It just explodes.
It explodes in her computer and we don't know what happened, but now you got to pay it. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
You know, and the other thing too is there's a lot of patients who think that we're the insurance company's best friend. And that it's our job to know what their benefits are. And it's ultimately the insurance company has a requirement to have a relationship and a conversation with the account holder. That means the employer and the insured. They do not have to talk to the dental office. And I think that we need to make sure that we have our systems and processes set up to be able to communicate that to the patient and to let the patient know that they're our secret weapon. The more they get involved, the better the result is always going to be.
Right. I totally agree with that. I think back in the day, we were just trying to be so helpful to our patients that, you know, we kind of did everything, and now they really expect it. And, you know, we're supposed to be this insurance genius. And with all of the thousands of insurance companies out there, it's just not possible. And so we have to give it back.
Yes. And I think there's a really great customer service way to handle that, because I think that we should have a goal to be helpful to our patients. Right. We should have a goal to be positive and customer service oriented, but we don't have to memorize everyone's plans. Involve the patient. That is really the secret to getting claims paid on time, is to really involve them.
Sure, absolutely. One more quick topic, and then we'll go to some questions and answers. Okay. So I like this. Schedule designer days for high production and low stress. Work smarter, not harder. I love that.
So what I mean by that is to make, if let's say your dentist's energy level is really in the afternoon, they're not a morning person, then it would really be a disadvantage to the dentist to schedule the major dentistry in the morning. And most philosophies, most systems, most consultants and speakers recommend produce in the morning, get your production out of the way before you go to lunch, which is typical. But there are a few dentists out there who don't like to have that big production in the morning. They really ramp it up in the afternoon. So the first thing that I recommend is discover the energy level of the provider of the care. So that would be the dentist and the hygienist. The second thing I recommend is to set your production goals and figure out what your hourly goal is. So if your hourly goal is $500 an hour and your crowns are $1,500, then that's 3 hours worth of your production goal for one crown. So you can figure out, if you template a schedule and you set where your barometers are for that ideal day. Quadrant dentistry always uses less energy and less traffic, less times the patient has to get off work, fewer appointments. There's just so many benefits to quadrant dentistry. And so when you design your day, think of how that day could flow with the fewest amount of interruptions. There's two ways to schedule a 2-column schedule. One way is to have a primary major dentistry column and a secondary minor restorative column. So the secondary would be maybe the new patient visit. It might be seat crowns, emergency visits, adjustments, Invisalign appointments, etc. My process in the last 2 practices I worked in is our assistants wanted to both handle that production. Right? So we scheduled the equal amount of production in each column. We just tag teamed and tiered the appointment schedule so that we could do a crown here and a crown here, and then maybe a restorative appointment here. And it flowed so much more easily. The more you set a goal to do quadrant multiple tooth restorations on the appointment, the fewer bodies you'll have to see on the schedule. It also has a side benefit of saving dental supply costs, because every time you have to re-sterilize the instruments, restock the room, clean the room, sterilize the room, set up for the next patient, it costs an average of $25 to $40 per time that you're turning that room around. So if you're seeing 20 patients in a day versus 10 patients in a day, the provider that's seeing 20 patients on that operative column is using twice the cost of dental supplies. So when you really start doing the math on that, there are so many benefits to really designing your schedule in a quadrant format. And then filling the other appointment times with the minor restorative and the adjustments and the C crowns and the Invisaligns, that you'll be able to make up that production. So I always say, if you have a 6-hour day versus an 8-hour day, I like to call that an 8-hour day in 6 hours, right? That's a hybrid day. So we always scheduled at least one Invisalign charge out on those days. So we didn't have to work as hard at filling that 6 hours. So that's what I'm talking about designer days. The other thing that I talk about in designer days is to design how many days you want to work on the schedule. And if you're going to really ramp up designer days, design a 4-day on, 4-day off work schedule. I have a sample 4-day on, 4-day off work calendar that I'm happy to send you. Just make sure you're keeping a list for me, because my brain will go on vacation. But if you think of it, if you can visualize working Monday through Thursday the first week, and then taking Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday off, and the next week working Tuesday through Friday, you're still working 4 days a week, but every other week you've got a 4-day weekend, and it's like having a mini vacation. So if you live in, California, beautiful California, and you can have a 4-day weekend, you could go to the beach a lot, right? If you're a skier and you live in Utah, you could go skiing and go up to the mountain and spend 4 lovely days with your family. Maybe it's 4 days staycation. Maybe you don't want to do anything but read a book, right? So, and then every other week, it's a 2-day off time. So that's what I'm talking about in designer days. Don't let the day design you. You design the day.
I like that. That is amazing. And unfortunately, we have run out of time. It feels like we just started. If you wouldn't mind, well, first, if anybody has any questions for Lois, at the bottom of your toggle bar, there's a question and answer. Go ahead and ask those questions. And in the meantime, Lois, could you give us your email address if they wanted some of those forms?
Oops. Okay, so my email for those forms is lois@bantaconsulting.com.
Okay.
So if you want any of those forms I've mentioned, you can email me directly. I'm also going to send them to you, Tina, so they can email you directly if they're in your database.
Yes, perfect. And then also my email address is tina@dentalpracticeenhancement.com. So either way, Lois will get those to you. I will get those to you, whatever you need. So first question we have, when you work with offices that have neglected accounts receivables, what reasons are you finding that it's gotten out of control? And how can doctors make sure that that doesn't happen again?
2 top reasons. Number 1, they're not collecting previous balances at the time of service. And number 2, they're not generating the report and calling on overdue accounts. So they're not taking a systematic approach to mind the report. So, and additionally, in doing that, if you have someone whose responsibility is to manage collecting the accounts receivables, the third thing is they're not taking private time away from the front desk to work the system. They try to do it while they're checking patients in and finalizing appointments. You're never going to get to the end of the report. So you have to take private time, not uninterrupted time, to work that system.
Okay, awesome. Second question, I like this. What is the best way to open a full schedule up for new patients?
So the best way to open up a full schedule, so what I'm interpreting that question to mean we're booked out a ways. So how do we schedule new patients? Number 1, decide where you want to schedule new patients. Number 2, how much time do you want to allow for that new patient? Number 3, what do you want to offer to that new patient? And then pre-block the schedule. So let's say you see new patients in hygiene. Hygiene's booked out 6 months. So you're going to be able to pre-block the schedule 6 months from now. And as appointments open up before that, you plop a new patient appointment in there. And that is, by the way, it's an excellent question, is the most common hang up that I see in dental offices that are very busy is we just don't have time to see new patients. And I've worked them through that strategy, but it takes about 6 months to really fix that dilemma.
Okay.
The other thing is don't clean their teeth on the first visit and put them in the doctor's second column at 8 o'clock and the first appointment after lunch, 90 minutes. Don't clean their teeth.
Okay.
That's another way
Right.
to be able to work that into a more current status.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. We have one more here. What is your suggestion for response to I can't charge the patient before seating treatment plan quadrant dentistry? The patient doesn't want us to change how we do things or won't do that. How do you handle the doorstop to change and practice improvement?
Okay, so first of all, not every patient is going to abide by the change. So you're going to have to get comfortable with that. You're going to reach most patients. You can say we have a new guideline in place, and to permanently reserve your appointment, we require 50% of your estimated amount due at the scheduling of this appointment. And if you've got a sticky wicket patient that always pays their bill and they never go, they don't delay paying their bill, I'm probably not going to mess with that patient too much, and I might make an exception to the rule. Just be careful about making too many exceptions to the rule for some patients, then it becomes the rule. So
Right.
set up a verbal skill that says, to permanently reserve this appointment, to set aside this time specifically for you, we have you pay half now and half at that first appointment.
Okay. How can an office train existing patients to be less insurance driven than they previously were?
Well, I suspect that sometimes this dilemma happens. Well, most often it happens because you're maybe opting out of a PPO plan and you're becoming more just, insurance free, so to speak. But you're still filing insurance, you're still accepting insurance payments, but you're not going to maybe take that big write-off anymore. So a great way to have that conversation. And by the way, I have a verbal skill for those kinds of questions. So Tina, if you're keeping a list, email me that one and I'll send the verbal skill on that. But basically I say to the patient, our guidelines have changed in how we work with your insurance company. What we've discovered is that it works better for the insurance company to pay you directly. They pay much more efficiently, much more quickly. You can put it on a credit card. By the time you get your credit card bill, the insurance payment will already have paid you. So let's say you're opting out of a PPO or premier status with Delta. They always pay the patient, right? So you can say, we are no longer going to be an in-network provider with Delta. And what that means for you is you'll pay 100% at your appointment, but the insurance will pay you directly. We will still accept your insurance. We still file your insurance. Insurance just will pay you instead of us. Not our choice, their choice.
I like that. I love blaming the insurance companies for everything. Because truly they have switched the game up on us and they continue to do it. So we'll play.
Really, and let the patients know that you have no control over how their insurance works.
Right.
You will work with the patient as much as you can to help them use every last dollar on their plan, but you cannot guarantee the insurance will ever pay a penny.
Okay. Well, I think that's all the questions we have. And it's been so much fun, Lois. I just love talking to you and having reminders and getting new information, and I'm sure our listeners as well. If you could, just one more time, give us your email address.
Sure. My email is Lois, Lois, at bantaconsulting.com. And Tina, it's been a pleasure. I love doing webinars. I especially love doing them for my friends.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And until next time, Mentors in Mayhem. Goodbye, everybody. Have a great day. Thanks, Lois.
Thanks, Tina.
Bye-bye.